Hey, it's 11:40. The Bets here in Las Vegas as we're getting ready for the Saints taking on the Raiders. So we need to get some Saints perspective. So joining us is Saints legend and insider for WWL, Super Bowl champion, two-time Pro Bowler, and analyst on the Saints Radio Network. Deuce McAllister joins us. First and foremost, Deuce, thanks for being on the show. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Hey, man, well, we're doing fantastic. We're doing better than this Raiders season. I think for both of these teams, higher expectation than what's played out. But I want to ask you, of course, being a legend as a running back, when you see Josh Jacobs these past couple of weeks kind of being the saving grace for the Raiders offense, over 500 rushing yards, scoring multiple touchdowns these past three games specifically, what do you see out of Josh's game and what do you like?
Well, you see why he was a first rounder. And, it's just to think that at some point in his career that he was looked at to be traded, it's unheard of. I mean, and so you really like his ability to be able to break tackles. He's done a really nice job of, he looks for contact. He looks for contact, and he's done a really nice job of running behind his pads and just being a physical running back. And so he's been an issue for, obviously, a lot of teams, and he's going to be one for the New Orleans Saints on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm curious with you because, you were blessed. Not many players get to spend their whole career with one team and being with the Saints for so long. And you just brought it up with Josh Jacobs. McDaniels comes in. It's a new coaching staff. The Patriots like to use as many running backs as possible. That running back room was crowded here in training camp. And Josh Jacobs has been like, hey, you want to fill up the room. You want to not give me my fifth-year option and pick it up. For you in your playing days, what was the mentality? Like, how did you find something to kind of give yourself a chip on the shoulder?
I played with two Heisman Trophy running backs.
I mean, it's true.
Not just players. I played with two players that won the Heisman Trophy, and, I was not that player. Obviously those guys were first rounders just like me, and so every day it's an opportunity to compete. And so if you don't have that mentality of, I'm coming to take this job or this is my job and I want to keep it, then you're not going to last long in the NFL. And that just doesn't bode as far as for the running back position. So for me, the chip was I wanted to prove that I belonged, but I wanted to have that job.
No, 100%. And now that we're going into the middle of the season and everything's shaken out, I'm just curious from a Saints perspective, what do you see as the main storyline for the Saints this season so far?
Injuries. You haven't performed to your expectations. Some of that's because of injuries, and some of that is just you haven't performed to what's been expected of you. And so disappointing to say the least. But in their situation, in their case, they're one game out of 500 with a 2-5 record. Now, that does not speak well for the other teams in the division because obviously they're in the same boats as the Saints. But it's not a totally lost season for this team just because you still can achieve the goal of going to the playoffs by winning, your division games and getting a little healthy. But, you have to be able to win your division games.
And even for the Raiders, too, I don't know if you've heard past couple of days, little sickness going around the city. Devontae Adams, second straight day, he's dealing with the illness. We still don't know if he'll play. And speaking of the injuries that the Saints have, I'm curious, not only just in football and basketball, obviously Zion hasn't been able to play, and then now you have for the Saints Michael Thomas, who, if he doesn't play, which is expected here on Sunday, that's 4 straight games due to a foot injury that he's not going to play. How do you feel like the city is with Michael Thomas? Because it's been a lot of injuries. It's been unfortunate. Do you think they're starting to get annoyed, or what's the feel in New Orleans?
I don't think that I don't really want to say you don't care what the city says. It's the players in that locker room. That's what you have to. That's what you have to worry about. As far as the city, yeah, it's disappointing. He's a dynamic. He's an all-pro player. He's you talk about an offensive MVP. That's what he has been. But at the end of the day, it's about those other 52 players in that locker room that's the concern. And so for him, he's got to get healthy. When you're dealing with a turf toe injury and you've dealt with ankle injuries, that's nothing that you can kind of push through. In a sense, you can, but more than likely you're going to end up hurting yourself even worse. But even a turf toe, I don't know if you're going to be able to push through with that, particularly when everything that you do from a receiver standpoint depends on cutting, being able to get in and out, being able to stop and start. So it's been unfortunate for him, but we know that he is a dynamic player when he's available, and he just hadn't been available a lot lately.
And the big news story coming out of New Orleans is Dennis Allen earlier this week announced that, yes, Andy Dalton will be starting this game and for the foreseeable future. And the Saints, to their credit, I think this is 4 straight games with at least 30 points. As Dennis Allen made the decision to go with Andy, how confident are you in him at the helm of the offense?
Andy's done a pretty good job of the offense. The problem with the Saints have been the interceptions and the fumbles. And Andy has had a hand in that as well. I mean, but also the running backs, the offensive line, the receivers as well. I mean, and that's one thing that they just can't have. I mean, if you look at this team overall, it's been the turnovers. It's been turnovers and missed tackles. That's why you have underperformed. And so if they can eliminate those to half of what it's been, then, maybe you give yourself a chance to be able to go on a streak or a run. But, you've had multiple games right there at the 2-minute warning or right at the 2-minute. You have a turnover, and it's you've had 4 interceptions that have been returned for a touchdown, and you've had a fumble that has been picked up and taken back. So if you think of bad, it has happened to this team offensively. Even though they are a top 5 offense, they've been able to move the football, they've been able to run the football, but they've turned it over.
And you bring up underperforming and not meeting expectations this year. Saving grace, like you said earlier, the division isn't doing too good, especially with the Buccaneers losing to the Panthers. But for us Raiders fans that are listening to you, what should we be looking for to attack the Saints if we want the Raiders to come out with a victory on Sunday?
Well, if the Saints aren't tackling well, then the Raiders it's going to bode really, really well for them. I mean, you're going to have your hands full tackling Josh Jacobs. I mean, that was one of the things that we led with. And then, you look at the weapons on the outside. The one thing that they do an outstanding job of is being able to set up the play action. And, if you have to bring an extra guy into that box, then that doesn't bode well for you. And so they've got weapons on the perimeter. And the Saints, you probably aren't going to have Marshawn Lattimore, who, is obviously another first rounder. And then Paulson Adebo, who was your other starting cornerback, he missed the last game that this team played. And so it's been, okay, you don't have quarterback 1, you don't have wide receiver 1, you don't have wide receiver 2, you don't have corner 1, you don't have corner 2.
Sheesh.
You have to almost
Deuce.
play perfect. I mean, it's almost like you have to play perfect, but every game they've literally been in it, and, you haven't been able to close out many of them.
Yeah, it's funny how the similarities of both these teams. Before we let you get out of here, I'm a huge hip-hop fan. A couple weeks ago, it was Lil Wayne's 40th birthday. Obviously, the Saints in New Orleans, in his hometown. I'm curious, in your career, how frequent did you see Wayne around town? How much love did he show the Saints? And is there any relationship you two guys have started throughout your career in New Orleans?
I've known Wayne for, since he was back in the Hot Boys days. So, you talk about he, baby, and the whole circle there. We've got mutual friends. We've done a lot of different things together. So I have a lot of respect for him. But Wayne's a Packer man. He's a cheesehead guy. I don't know how it happened, but he's a cheesehead guy. So we still love him here in New Orleans. But
keep him at a
He's
distance.
a cheesehead guy.
Keeping him at a distance. I love it. Deuce McAllister joining us, Saints legend, insider for WWL, and he'll be on the call on the Saints Radio Network. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for taking some time out for us, Deuce.
All right, no problem. Thank you, guys.
There it is. Deuce McAllister joining us here on 1140 The Bet as we get you ready. Saints and Raiders, it's almost game day.